Hello. Hello? Hellos. Uh, anyways, welcome to Chapter 9 The Bones That Cannot Be Cracked. An hour or so after Steve and the Lions took shelter in the room with the cave paintings, Mrs. McGillicuddy's cell phone rang. Steve, sitting next to a female lion, checking her bandages. He stood with a grunt, limped across the room, and answered the fifth ring. Hello? Hi, Steve. It's Carolyn. Of course it is, he rumbled. He rummaged around in the supply pile for another piece of beef jerky. It was handmade. It was homemade, sorry, and very good. Who else would it be, really? He noticed that he was slurring a little bit, probably the pain pills, or maybe the blood loss. How are you? Oh, I'm great, he said, putting a little edge in his voice. Thanks to you, I mean. I found the bandages and whatnot. Very helpful. I think the bleeding has stopped. Well, that's good. Yes, yes, it is. And suspiciously convenient. Long pause. There's a little clay pot with a cork in it, Carolyn said. Did you see that? Matter of fact, I did. Right next to the syringes. I wonder what it was. That's the one. I got it from my sister. What's in there will help you with blood loss. She paused. If, if that's a problem. As it happened, yes, I believe that it is. However, could you have guessed? I'm pretty lightheaded, and I don't think it's just the pain pills. So, what? Do I chew it up in the little round bits in the pot, or no? What then? Well, that is, it is a suppository. I see. So I should stick it up my ass then, huh? Yes. Interesting. What? I was just thinking the same thing about you, Steve roared. Crammed it up your ass, you crazy horrible bitch. He reached out. He reached for an off button. Then something occurred to him. Quick question. Before I hang up on you, he waited for a long time. You still there? Yes. Does that stuff work on lines? Lines? Yes, lines. My backup. Thanks to them as well, by the way. Those guys were awesome. They got here and the prov- they got they got here just in the proverbial nick of fucking time. But the female is banged up pretty bad. She lost a lot of blood. I put a couple of those pressure bandage on her, but I think she's still bleeding. They're not dead? Nope, Steve said, proud of himself. And the first time in decades, I let them in. But I told you, yes, you mentioned that they were disposable. I'm pretty sure that was your word. But seeing as how they just saved my life, I didn't feel like leaving them out there to fucking die was the Da way. The what? The Dao way? It's Chinese. It, it meant it wasn't the right thing to do. Oh, your pronunciation. What? Never mind. But to answer your question, yes, it should work on lines as well. Steve was quiet for a long time. Are you still there? What? Yes, sorry. I was trying to imagine sticking something up a lion's ass. I don't think I'm quite there yet. Oh, well, it's up to you. Like I said, at this point, they're disposable, but they won't hurt you. They've given their word. I see. Gave the word, did they? To you? Not me. My brother. The big scary guy? No, my other brother, Michael. He talked he talked with the lions. He told them to look after you. Talked with the lions, did he? Yes. We made a deal. They will protect you as if you were their own cub. Maybe they were just being polite. No, she said seriously. Dresden may be in exile, but he is still king. In his language, the word for promise is the same as the word for a bone that cannot be cracked. He will do as he says. Steve considered this. When he spoke, some of the jokes was gone from his voice. If you say so, then that seems to be what they're doing. And honestly, I'd almost figured out that they weren't going to hurt me. He paused. It just takes a while to wrap your head around the idea. When I got up this morning, I was under the impression that lions were scary. He patted Dresden's mane, offered him the rest of the beef jerky. The lion sniffed, then took it gingerly from his hand, exposing canine thicker than Steve's thumb. These two seem okay, though. We struck a mighty blow against prejudice this day, he thought occurred to him. Say, do you know what the female's name? She didn't answer at first. Then he heard a deep bass rumble that sounded exactly like a lion. Steve held the receiver away from his head, eyebrow raised. The male lion looked up at the sound, interested. Is there another lion with you? No, that was me. That's her name. Oh, Steve paused. I don't think I could pronounce that right. Probably not. Theoretically, I can't either. What do you mean, theoretically? Never mind. It takes practice and minor surgery to really get it right. But you might call her Nagasaki, Naga for short. That was what the guy who kidnapped them did. They don't like those names, but they recognize them. They know who you meant. Dresden and Nagasaki, huh? Cute. Are they married or whatever you call it? No, Naga's his cub. Pretty big for a cub. Well, his child, but she'll get bigger. She won't be full grown for another couple years, if she makes it that long. What do you mean? Like I said, she lost a lot of blood, and I can't go anywhere because of the dogs. There's at least a couple hundred of them out there. How are you planning to go get me out of here? We'll walk, but it won't be until tomorrow at the earliest. Naga, she's not gonna make it that long. And what the hell do you mean we'll walk? I thought you couldn't. We'll talk about it when I get there. Maybe I can. Can't you alter your schedule or something? She saved my life. For a moment, he saw Jack's face through the hole in the roof of the pharmacy. Trapped in a darkness he would never leave. Go, I'll catch up. I'm sorry, Steve. I just can't. But the lines isn't important. Yeah, well, maybe she's important to me. He hung up. And fuck you. She called back, then called back again. After the third time, he turned the phone off. Oh, excuse me. Part 2. When he hung up, the female line, Naga, Steve thought her name is Naga, was still conscious, but only just. Despite his best efforts and admirable patience on her part, blood was still leaking out from under the bandage. More important, she seemed to be getting worse. Putting on the pressure bandage had obviously hurt her, but she hadn't mauled him, hadn't even growled. Talked with the lions, did they? He could almost believe it. Not quite, but almost. But maybe on some level, he did believe it, because when he lifted the thick flesh of Naga's muzzle to check her capillary response, he really wasn't afraid at all. Steve wasn't a veterinarian, but he'd had a lot of dogs over the years, including one who got run over. He knew that one way to check for blood loss in animals was to push your thumb into the gums and watch how fast the color returns. If it comes back fast, they're a good sign. That's a good sign. If it takes a while, like it had on Angie after she got hit by a car, not so much. He didn't think Naga was quite as far gone as Angie had been. Not yet, but she was getting there fast. So, as an experiment, he shook one of the suppositories out of the little clay jug that Carolyn left for him and took it into the bathroom. There, he bent over and used it to troubling finger to cram it up his own ass. When he took it out, when he turned on the tap to wash his hands afterward, nothing came out. He used a couple of bottles of Dasani instead, lathering up a dry, ancient bar of ivory soap, gathered dust in the dish over the sink. By the time he got to the stink off his index finger, he felt better. A lot better, actually. Even the slurring in his voice was gone. But he was really thirsty. He guzzled 2 more bottles of water and half of a third before he stopped feeling parched. Then, with a sigh, he pulled the cork out of the little clay pot and shook out another suppository. Here, kitty, kitty, he whispered under his breath. Justin looked at him quizzically. Sorry, big guy, Steve said. Bad joke. He limped across the room. Naga laid in a fairly sizable pool of her own blood. He didn't want to sit in it and soak his pants. And with the way his ankle and calves were torn up, he couldn't squat. Naga herself was no longer conscious, but Steve felt the eyes of her father on him, yellow and alien in the dim light of the overhead. When he was ready, he bent at the waist and lifted her tail, exposing her rectum. She gave no response at first, but when Steve placed the small white globe against the puckered flesh and pushed it in, she trembled in her sleep. Dresden brow furrowed. He took a step forward and showed Steve a flesh of teeth. Steve stood up rapidly, held his palm out to Dresden. All done, he said. Sorry. He took a step back. Dresden, to his relief, didn't follow. I'm gonna see if I can find a bowl, he said. If this works, she's liable to be awfully thirsty. The old woman in the kitchen, her husband, done with the mowing, was milling around in the porch with a couple of dogs. He seemed lost, bumbling here and there among the dogs like a pinball, jiggling the locked door handle every so often. Inside, his wife stood in the kitchen, sink dry washing ancient dusty dishes with a rotten sponge. Excuse me. Supper isn't quite ready, dear. Why don't you go and watch the game? Do you have a bowl I can borrow? A biggish one? A mixing bowl, maybe? She blinked. Why, yes. Yes, I do. She sounded almost as surprised as Steve was. She pointed to the cabinet under the stove. There. Thanks. Steve opened the cabinet door and rummaged around inside. There was a there was a stack of bowls. Ceramic, stainless steel, plastic. With a clatter, he spilled a good-sized one out of the pile. Oh, he slipped a good. Oh God, he slipped a good-sized one out of the pile. Supper isn't quite ready there. I'll go watch the game. She smiled and nodded. He limped back to the living room. To his amaze, Naga was standing. As Steve watched, she took a single step and she wobbled but did not fall. Dresden moved to her hindquarters and sniffed her butt with a quizzical look on his face. Feeling better? Steve heard what? Steve heard real relief in his own voice. Awesome. Probably the lion heard it too. They swished their tails accidentally and amusingly in sync. Steve went to the supply pile and emptied half a dozen bottles of water into the bowl. Naga's nostril flared as he did this, and she took another step. This time, when she lost balance, she did fall. Don't try to do too much, Steve said. I'll bring it to you. She set the bowl down. He set the bowl down in front of her. She lapped it up greedily until more than half was gone, then laid on her side. Hesitantly, Steve touched her muzzle. She pulled away, causing Steve to jerk his hand back. You could tell it overreaction. You can call it overreaction, but if ever there was a good time to be jumpy, it's when fiddling around with a lion's mouth. Then she leaned forward and licked his knuckles. Justin watched this, swishing his tail again. Do you mind if I? Tentatively, he touched her muzzle again, but when she didn't draw back, he lifted her lips and pressed a thumb against the gum, just behind her left incisors. He tested twice, comparing it again, the same test done on his own fingernails. He judged her to be better, but not quite well. He slid around her to her hindquarters and inspected the pressure bandage on her hip. The bandage was bloated and dripping blood, saturated. Steve debated changing it, then settled for trying a third one. His last over the uh trying a third one. His last over the first two. That's weird. Comma. Okay. He pressed down on this, hoping for the direct pressure would help. It seemed like the sort of thing that they did in doctor shows. Part 3. An hour later, he was still pressing down. Naga's bleeding was better, but it hadn't completely stopped. There was one more suppository left in the clay jug. He went back and forth about when to use it. Now? Or at the last minute? He had no idea how the thing worked, so he couldn't begin to guess. Was it like a video game where if you drink your health potion too soon, you're wasting some of the benefits? Or is it like sharpening a knife where it was best to put forth a little effort to when a little effort to what the edge every time you use it rather than waiting until it gets really dull before you trot out of the sharpening stone? He didn't know. What he did know was that he couldn't get the bleeding to stop. Naga was unlikely to be around when Carolyn returns, and you won't want to miss that, Steve whispered. It's bound to be weird. As he waited, his mind drifted back to Jack, who had always been kind to him, and to whom he had brought ruin. Thinking this, looking down at Naga's wounded body, it came to him that there might be a new way to say the nothing that had weighed on his heart for very long. He touched Naga's neck gently. She lifted her head a little, looked at him. I'm going to get you out of here. His words hung up in a dusty silence in the living room. Justin turned at the sound, golden eyes solemn over his blood-caked muzzle. Carolyn's word echoed in his mind. He is still king. His word for promise also means a bone that cannot be cracked. Steve met the lion's gaze. Yeah, I'm gonna get her out of here if it fucking kills me. Steve stood and went back to the kitchen. The woman wasn't doing dishes anymore. Instead, she stood at the wall, scraping down the dirt and the paint in lines of shapes like a caveman's image of a dog. Supper isn't quite ready, dear. That's okay. I need to borrow your car. He looked around. He was hoping for her purse or a bowl. Then his eyes happened upon a peg with a square key dangling from it. One of them was a leather tab with the Ford logo on it. Gotcha. He hadn't paid a lot of attention to the house when he was outdoors, but he vaguely remembered the garage being on the far end. There was a hall leading in the direction, but it was dark. He found a switch and flipped it, but no lights followed. He wandered down the hall in darkness, feeling ahead with his fingers. The first room he came was a bedroom that had been converted into the artist's studio. Someone, the woman, had once used it for painting. Still life in oils. Flower, fruit, a random jumble of costume jewelry. Most of them were really good. Steve thought of the kindergarten scribbles lining the living room wall. He shivered as he shut the door behind him. The next room was indeed the garage, and the Ford was there, but it sat for four completely it sat on four completely flat tires. The dust on the hood was so thick, it was difficult to tell what color the car was. Steve tried the key anyways, but it didn't so much as click. Shit. He pounded the steering wheel. What then? He shut the door in the garage and made his way back to the relatively brightness of the living room. Dresden stood over Naga. The puddle of her blood was wider. His sides heaved. Her size, oh, yeah, her sides heaved. Steve rattled the last suppository out of the little clay jug and crammed it up her butt next to the other one. He wiped his finger on the carpet and rinsed it off with half a bottle of Dasani, then drank the rest. He limped back into the dim, windowless foyer. Then, from outside, he heard an engine. Carolyn? He ducked into the kitchen and looked out the window over the sink. Not Carolyn, but one of those little white Jeeps that the post office used. It was 2 houses away. Lawn mover guy was nowhere in sight. Uncounted dozens of dogs laid in the yard and nearby on the street. They watched the truck approach. Steve wondered what they would do. The mailman was 1 house away now. He put the mail in the mailbox, but he did not continue down the road. Only sat there, engine idled. He's seen them. After a long moment, the mail guy rolled up his window. He turned into the driveway next door, then backed out and pointed in the opposite direction. Pointing in the opposite direction. He drove off down the street. Shit. He couldn't think of what help the mailman might conceivably have offered, but he sure did hate to see him go. The dogs watched the Jeep depart, but did not follow. After it turned in onto the main road, they seemed to have lost interest. Also, instead of just sitting on the lawn and staring at the house, now some of them were doing dog stuff, humping each other, playing bite tag or whatever that was, scratching a flea. Over the next 15 minutes or so, more than half of them wandered off. That's progress. Not all, though. Thane and a couple dozens other kept vigil on the yard. As Steve watched, a big dog, Rottweiler maybe, trotted up to the porch and sat down. Fuck. He went to the door and looked out through the peephole. His ankle was starting to throb. Well, he thought, I guess you could always call 911. They'll probably get you out of here. He snapped his finger and turned to Mrs. McGillicuddy's phone. Back on. When he had a good signal, he dialed 411. A computer asked him, what city? He answered it, careful to enunciate clearly. We're listening. Any cab service. Behind him, from the porch, came a low, deep growl. Steve moved away from the door. The mechanical voice recited 9-digit number, then asked if Steve would like to be connected to for additional charge of 50 cents. Steve said yes. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Come on, Steve thought. 4, 5. He was just about to hang up and try a different service when someone answered the phone. You Canton taxi, the man said. He spoke with an Indian accent, thick and musical. Se habla español? How about English? Steve asked. Of course, my man, the man said. He sounded slightly hurt that Steve would ask. Great, Steve said. I need a cab, a big one. You got a minivan, something like that? I have 2, but only 1 driver at the moment. She's just heading out on a call. Can you wait about an hour? Behind him, the Rottweiler barked. scrabbled at the door. Naga's blood pooled at his feet. I'm afraid that's not convenient, Steve said, struggling to sound natural. Tell you what, I'll make it worth your while. How about $100? We're not going far. He had no money. We're not going far. He had no money, but there was the gun. He would apologize later. You'll be a couple minutes late for your other call, that's all. Sorry, sir, but I cannot. I'm in really what? I'm really in a rush. He and the kids are meeting my in-laws. My car won't start. There'll be hell to pay if I'm late. Tell you what, 500. $500? The man said. Ah, now I understand. In my village, we call people like you the shepherd of shit mountain. Such men were often canned. Goodbye. No, wait, Steve said. $500 cash, really. Solemn promise. Please. Plus, whatever the fare costs, I won't even be 5-minute ride, I swear. The man thought about it. Possibly. What is the address, please? That was a tough one. Steve thought frantically. He limped to the kitchen window, peeked out the mailbox. 211 Garrison Drive, he said. In the Garrison Oaks subdivision. Do you know it? Garrison Oaks, the man said. His voice sounded distant. Yeah, Steve said. Smallish neighborhood just off the highway 78. Do you know it? Oh, right, he said vaguely. You know, I do not think I ever been in there before. I'm not surprised, Steve said. On the other side of the door, the dog gave off a low, throaty bark. Another joined it, then another. Soon, they were all barking. What is that noise? The cabbie asked. Nothing, just my dogs. He sounded like a very big dog indeed. Yeah, Steve said. He's pretty big. He has separation anxiety. He hates it when I leave him alone. You cannot bring the dog in my cab, you understand? I wouldn't dream of it, Steve said. All right, the guy said. For $500, I will come myself. I will be there in 10 minutes. Look, there's one other thing. My friend is coming with me. He's sort of agoraphobic. And what? He's sick? I do not want sick man in my taxi, sir. No. He's not sick. Agoraphobic means he doesn't like being outside. When he gets here, pull up as close as you can. Open the door and honk. Can you do that? Long silence. I do not think I like this, sir. Give me a sec. Ooh, excuse me. I do not think I like this, sir. What's not to like? Steve said. Eyes squint shut, brow furrowed. $500 is a pretty good tip. He forced himself to stop talking, gritted the phone with white knuckles. The dispatcher thought about it for a while. I'll be there in 10 minutes, he said. Make sure you have the money. It's a white brick house. I'm sure it's a very nice one. Make sure you have the money. The cab pulled up 11 minutes later. A white minivan with a photograph of the Mayan pyramid and a Chichen Itza on the side. The driver honked. He didn't pull around to the front door, though. Of course not, Steve thought. That would have been too easy. The dogs lunging in the yard watching this, but they didn't bark, didn't growl. Steve's desperate. Scrabbled for an idea. Even with just 6 dogs on the lawn, the 30 feet or so might as well have been 12,000 miles. He wouldn't have tried to run for it, even if he was able to run, limping, carrying a half-grown lion. He would stand absolutely no chance whatsoever. The cab driver honked again. Justin patted over the front door, sniffed, rumbled. He looked at Steve. I'm thinking, damn it. Seconds dragged out. He looked out the kitchen window. Maybe we can go through the garage. That was an electric door opener, and the cab driver knocked on the door. Steve and Justin looked at each other. Steve grinned. Coming! Sir, please, can you hurry? I need to return to my office quickly. Steve hobbled to the front door and looked out the peephole. The Rottweiler was the only dog on the porch. Thane and 5 others stood on the lawn, watching under the sunny blue autumn sky. Steve took the gun out of the holster, put his hand on the doorknob, did a mental count. 3, 2. Steve, bloody and bandaged, yanked the door open with his right hand and shot the Rottweiler. The dog's head exploded and the crash of blood and thunder. Steve grabbed the cabbie driver by the shirt. Get in! Out on the lawn, Thane barked, furious. The cab driver instinctively raised his hand and went into a little half crouch. Do not shoot! He tried to back away. Steve leaned backwards with all the weight, yanking the two of them into the foyer. His ankle gave out and fell over backwards. The cabbie driver almost fell with him, but recovered. The dogs were charging at the door. Thane's ice blue eye bore down on him. Then his feet touched the sidewalk. Thane leaped and Steve kicked the door shut with his good foot as hard as he was able to. It slammed shut. A tiny fraction of a second later, there was a meaty thud, and thud impacted the door. Still on his back, Steve spun around on the linoleum to deal with the driver. Don't move. But the man wasn't moving. Dresden, all 400 pounds of him, stood inches away. The cabbie driver was a short, slight Indian man with caramel-colored skin. His eyes stretched wide in terror. His hands hovered near his face in a gesture of surrender, or perhaps self-defense. He was trembling. Don't worry, Steve said, striving for a comforting tone. He doesn't bite. The cabbie driver looked at Steve. That is a lion. Yes, it is. You have a gun. That's true too. Well, the cabbie driver said, speaking as if a very dull child. Why don't you shoot the lion? Steve laughed. Are you kidding? Dresden's my buddy. Then it came to him. YouTube. Christian the Lion. Don't you watch the internet? What? Never mind. I need your keys. What? The keys to your cab. Give them to me. Steve waggled the gun. The driver's face fell. What about my $500? Yeah, it turns out I was lying about that. Sorry. He thought for a moment. Look, I actually am kind of sorry. He gestured at Naga with the gun. If I don't get her out of here soon, then never mind. Long story, but supposedly there's a duffel bag full of cash waiting for me back at the other place. How about I mail it to you? I'll make it 1,000. I think that you're lying again. No, I will. Soon as I can, promise. He would too. But right now, I'm going to need your keys. Sorry. You will not shoot me. Absolutely not. The driver glanced down at Dresden. What about him? He's coming with me. Both of them are. Oh, then by all fucking means. The cab driver fishes around in his pocket for keys and handed to them. They jingled like the bell in the of heavens in Steve's hand. Oh, thanks, man, Steve said. Really sorry about this. Something else occurred to him. You got a cell phone? He didn't want the guy to call 911. In the cab. The keys was the old-fashioned kind. Just a metal key, no lock or unlock button. Is the cab unlocked? Is the cab locked? No. Steve gestured with the gun. You better not be lying to me. Why would I lock it? I was just going to the front door. Yeah, okay. Steve squeezed his eyes shut. Thought for a moment. Okay. There's a bathroom right around the corner there. Go inside and shut the door. He saw that the guy's knees were literally trembling. Look, man, for what it's worth, I'm really sorry about this. I'm in sort of a situation, and yes, I'm quite sure. Please go fuck yourself. The guy backed up at a single cautious step. Dresden rumbled a warning. No, it's okay, big guy, Steve said. The lion looked at him, confused. Steve put his arm around the small man's shoulder, gave him a little man hug. It's okay. He's a friend, you see. Then the cab driver, go on, chew. The cabbie took one cautious step away, then another, his eyes never leaving Dresden. When he was close enough, he jumped inside the bathroom and slammed the door shut. Steve heard it locked. Naga was conscious, but she didn't look like she could stand. Steve checked her uh, capillary response again. It was just okay. She had lost some ground. He checked the magazine on the gun, 8 rounds, plus one in the chamber. There were 7 dogs left. He went back to the living room and sat on the floor next to Naga. He slipped his hands under her, testing her weight. She was very heavy, 200 pounds or so, but Steve thought he could probably lift her. Okay, he said to Justin. You ready? Justin looked at him quizzically. Steve jiggled the keys the way he had done when he was going to take Petey for a ride in the car. For a moment, his heart ached. He wondered if he were ever going to see his dog again. Justin looked at the keys, still confused. Steve holstered the gun. He turned to look at Justin in the face. He took a handful of the big lion's mane in his right hand and patted Naga's side with his left. I'm going to get her. Oh, I am going to get her. Here, he patted Naga again. Out of here. He pointed to the front door. Justin's brow unfurled. He roared a little bit, scaring the shit out of Steve. Then he stretched out and licked Steve's cheek. Good enough, Steve thought. He got his arm around Naga. She seemed confused, only semi-conscious. I hope she doesn't forget we're buddies, he thought, and lifted her. She squirmed a bit, then half stood, lifting her forequarters off the living room floor. Steve ducked under her, lifting at the same time, and managed to get her over his left shoulder in a half-assed, crouched version of the fireman's carry. Lifting with your legs, not your back, he thought, and teetering hysterically. He strained against her weight, pushing with his good leg and his bad. The pain was exquisite, blinding. It was exquisite, blinding. He flashed on Carolyn's face and thought, I fucking hate that bitch. The adrenaline burst from this just enough to get the line up. Once he was standing, it was easier. He took a single cautious step. He held his balance, but only just. He took a second, smaller step, almost hopping with his good leg, dragging the bad one behind him. That was better. It was not exactly graceful. Naga, dangling over his back, made some cranky sounding lion noise. Steve told her to shut the fuck up. He inched his way to the door. Dresden followed at his flank. The lion's eyes were fixed on the door, and they laid beyond. And what lay beyond? Yeah, he knows, Steve thought. He understands what we're going to do. Still, weighed down by Naga, he turned and squinted out the peephole. There were now down to 6 dogs on the lawn, including Thane. Even so, 6 is a lot of dogs. This is so going to suck, Steve thought. He looked down at Dresden. You ready? The big lion switched his tail. He did not look at Steve. His face was like something cast in stone. Balancing Naga on his shoulder with his left hand, Steve slipped the pistol out of his holster and held it with his teeth. He tasted gun oil, metallic, and alien. He put his hands on the doorknob, squeezed his eyes shut, then opened them. Showtime, he grunted, throwing the door open. Thane stood first, barked. Steve took the gun out of his mouth aimed carefully and shot him right between the blue and brown eyes. Dresden charged out, roaring. Seeing him, one of the dogs turned and ran the other way. Steve limped across the porch. Dresden launched himself with a big launched himself at a big Doberman and landed on it. A second later, Steve heard the dog scream. The other three dogs, all big, tore into Dresden wherever they could find a spot: his shoulder, his front leg, his back. Steve, clutching the iron railing, limped down first one step, then two. Now he was on the sidewalk, on his shoulder. Naga stirred. "Easy, girl," he said. The cab was perhaps 30 feet away. Then the Doberman was. When the Doberman was dead, Dresden turned his attention to the dog biting his right foreleg, a big German shepherd. He lifted his paw, exposing the dog's flank, and tried biting her. He missed the first time, but with the second bite, he clamped down on the dog's hind leg. Steve heard a crack. The shepherd screamed. "Three down," Steve thought. "We're doing this." He inched his way down the front walk, past a rose bush, then a second. He was 20 feet away from the cab. Dresden was having trouble reaching the dog on his back. Steve considered shooting it, then decided that, based on his record, he was just as likely to hit the lion as the dog. After a moment, Dresden retargeted. He bent his right and snapped at the dog on his hindquarter. The dog let go and backed off. Circling, it noticed Steve and gave it alert bark. The sound of it echoed down the street. A second later, Steve heard toenails clicking on asphalt. First one set, then two, then a stampede. Oh, shit. He was 15 feet away from the cab. Dresden pounced on the dog who had given the alert. Steve was past him now, so he couldn't see what was happening, but 2 steps later, he heard another scream. Dresden answered the roar burbled through something wet. 10 feet left. Steve risked a glance over his shoulder. There was one dog still on Dresden, hanging from his back, but behind him, on the hill, dozens, hundreds, more of them steamed in to take his place. Where could they all have been coming from? Let me try that line again. Where could they all have been coming from? Steve wondered. There were far too many. Even Dresden could not stand long against such a horde. "Come on, big guy. Time to get out of here." Only 2 feet remained between him and the cab. The cab door was blessedly, wonderfully unlocked. Steve turned. Dresden only looked at him. He was surrounded by corpse. The final dog, a Doberman, hung at his mane, scrambling and growling. The lion made no move. "Come on," Steve screamed again. He took another step and bumped into the cab, almost losing his balance, muscle trembling against Naga's weight. He slid the minivan door. "Come on!" Steve looked over his shoulder to see that he kept what was keeping the lion. "What the hell are you doing? Come on!" Dresden shrugged off the Doberman. Victorious now, he watched as Steve laid his daughter down in the back seat with a whoosh of deflating vinyl upholstery. Watch as Steve slid the door shut. She is safe now. His yellow eyes met Steve's. Dresden, who was a king as of the old age, swished his tail just once, then deliberately he turned to face the coming dogs. Every muscle stood out in stark relief. He roared. The sound echoed down the street, bouncing off the neat suburban house and well-manicured hedges and the force of dynamite. The dogs flowed at him like a tide, bottomless and unstoppable. Dresden charged them. Steve froze for a moment, feeling small, unable to look away from the force at work before him. Carolyn's words came to him. "They will protect you as if you were their own cub." Dresden smashed into the wave of dogs, a cannon a cannon shot of fury and blood. He stalled them. He delayed them for Naga and for me. Then channeling Celia's voice, "Don't waste it, asshole." Steve shook his head, forced himself to look away, opened the door, and took his place in the driver's seat. The dogs were undressed in now. First one, then 3, then a dozen, then 2 dozens with 100 more on the way. Together, they formed a living wall of muscle and fur. The cab couldn't push through that. Steve thought a tank couldn't push through that. He slammed the cab door. Now, Justin was buried under them, invisible under a rolling mountain of fur and teeth. Labs, poodles, Doberman, Rottweiler, black, yellow, brown. The cab driver's pale face watched all of it from the bathroom window. Steve rolled down the van's window, frantic, then drew the pistol and steadied himself. He took careful aim, fired. A dog fell, screaming, and was replaced with 3 more. He fired again, fired until the pin clicked down on an empty chamber. "Fuck you," he screamed. "Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you." One or two dogs looked up at this. The chocolate lab barked, then ran for the van. Steve rolled the window back up, but he wasn't quick enough. The dogs hound down on the window by a fiery brown paw, barking, snapping, hind legs scrapping at the door. There were only about 3 inches of room between the top of the glass and the door frame, not enough to get at Steve, but the dog's weight was such that he couldn't roll the window up. He flipped the dog the bird, but the keys in the ignition. He flipped the dog the bird, put the keys in the ignition. Why did I have trouble saying that? Ignition. The cab started immediately. He backed out of the driveway. The brown dog still clung to the window, blocking his view. Steve leaned back at the seat to check if there was, by some miracle, Justin had emerged from the pile. He had not. Steve pointed the cab at the exit and floored it. A few seconds later, he squealed to a stop at the gate, tires smoking. He pulled on his blinkers, turned right onto Highway 78, floored it again. The Garrison Oaks sign dwindled in his rear mirror. Part 4. The cabbie driver's name, Harshin Patel. 2 hours later, cowering behind a shower curtain in a dusty green bathtub, he heard a woman's voice. "Steve?" "Be careful," Patel said. I think that they are crazy." He cradled his left hand, bandaged in a roll of bloody toilet paper and what was left of his shirt. "Steve?" Her tone was doubtful now. "I do not know who that is. If you're looking for the lying asshole with the 2 lions, he left." "He left?" She sounded incredulous. "Yes, a couple hours ago." "How?" "He stole my taxi." She chuckled. "He's resourceful. I'll give him that." "You should be very careful," Harsen said. There are 2 of them, the old man and a woman. She came to me and said, 'Supper is ready.' And they both started biting me." He heard the edge of the scream. "What?" "You should be careful," Harsan said. "There are 2 of them, an old man and a woman. She came at me and said supper is ready. And then they both started biting me." He heard the edge of a scream in his voice and clamped down on it. "They have eaten my left pinky and part of my thumb. They might still be out there. You should..." "It's okay," the woman said. She rattled the doorknob. "Can you open this, please?" Harsan considered this for several seconds, then reached out with a shaking hand and opened the door. The woman in the hall was on the small side. Frizzled hair, barefoot, she carried a blue duffel bag slung over her shoulder. She looked him up and down, surveyed the wound on his shoulder, his neck, his crotch. Her brown eyes and dark intense uh, her her brown eyes were dark and intense, difficult to meet. You'll live. Do you think so? Yeah, you were lucky. Not a lot of people get to visit this neighborhood. Her son nodded miserably. I believe you. I wonder, may we please leave now? She thought about it. Sure, she shrugged. I'll walk you out. What's your name? He told he told her. They stepped out of the light together. Nice to meet you. I'm Carolyn. Do do you live here? Not in this one. She jerked her thumb down the street. I'm a couple blocks deeper. Oh, he looked at her horrified. Sorry. Relax. I won't hurt you. You helped Steve. She shook her head, smiling. He really is ever so good at slipping out of these pet petonsha? Petosha. Don't you think? These what? Sorry, that isn't English. They all start to blur after a while, I said. Uh, Petosha it means little traps. Oh. They walked in silence a block or so. She spoke next. Still, you did help Steve. I should repay the favor, she considered. Do you have a family? Do you live in a city? My wife, es- Esperanza. We have two boys. But no, we're out in. She waved her hand, cut him off. I don't care at all. When we get to the end of the street, I'm going to disappear. When that happens, put your family in your car and I can't. What? I can't put my family in my car. He stole it. I don't know where it is. Who stole it? Steve? Is the lion is he the lion man? Yes. Yes, him. He's the motherfucker who stole my cab. Oh, hmm. Carolyn thought about this for a second, then handed him a blue duffel bag. Here, take this. Buy another one. He unzipped the bag, looked inside. Money. Oh, yeah. Spend it fast. It won't be worth much in a week or two. Barry O'Shea is out of hiding. Once he established, there will be a sort of plague. What? What plague? Who is? It doesn't matter. Pack up your wife and kids. Buy food, water, weapon, a generator maybe. Go into the city, someplace with a lot of electric lights and a good power supply. Get indoors on the top floor of a tall building if you can. Stay away from windows, and if you see people with tentacles, stay away. Don't let them touch you. Harsan gaped at her. She spoke of intensities. She spoke of intense. Sorry. She spoke of insanities, but her voice was calm and certain. Her expression reminded him of a painting that frightened him as a child. Kali the Annihilator, smiling as small things died. It's about to get very dark, you see. End of chapter 9. Yeah. Not my best read through, but I love the relationship that Steve has with Dresden and Naga. Oh, I got a little I got okay. The time when they were describing the wave of dogs as Dresden stood against it, I had chills just like going like shivered down as I was reading it. Just an image of a wave as they all approach slowly as the crest on the crest of the wave comes down at Dresden. He roared, echoing against it, leaping straight into it, right? I was like, that imagery is like, oh, whoa. Right. And then maybe like, I don't know, I guess in the foreground fuzzy of Steve in a cab trying to hold Naga in the back. I guess he's still pointing his gun at the dogs. Or not even pointing yet. And he's still trying to get in, trying to break free from the gaze of what's happening. But that imagery right there has Lion leap forward into the wave of hundreds and hundreds of dogs coming out of different breeds coming at him. Whew. Man, even if I want to like depict this image, I have it in my head, but I don't think I even have the skills to like do it correctly. Maybe I'll try that. I don't know. But anyways, what a what a sight. And the cabbie driver lives. I forgot about that. I was like, oh, I forget if he actually makes it out alive. And I did remember that he gets the duffel bag, but I was like, what? How would he do? Ah, right. Carolyn comes in. By the way, comes in to the house to save them, right? Wasn't this supposed to be like they can't enter Garrison Oaks? What? Huh? Right? Anyways, we have chapter 10 next. Assure us. Assure us? Yeah, Assura with an S. But yeah, comes in to Garrison Oaks. That's weird, right? Anyways, thanks for joining me. Oh, I didn't fix the text on this. This is supposed to say chapter 8. The the bone that can't be cracked. The bone that cannot be cracked. A bone that cannot be cracked. Yeah, sorry for fixing that late. Hopefully I can get chap. Oh, wow. I didn't. Why does that say? Did I not do this last time? The fact that this is chapter 8, this is chapter 9. Wait, maybe I just put the. Whatever. Anyways, next is chapter 10 will assure us. Thank you again for joining me, guys.